AOC and Jamie Raskin take on the Supreme Court, I'm Vanessa Branda reporting to you for Really American. A roundtable discussion was pulled together with a group of judicial experts to shine a light on the Supreme Court and the gifts that they are receiving.
And Congress has a ban on outside employment, and as AOC was saying, we have a $50 gift ban, so none of us goes anywhere near doing that.
Oh, you don't do $500,000 vacations?
Well, I mean, that's the comical thing. I mean, members of Congress don't even understand that. Under what circumstances would a Supreme Court justice be accepting hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars in foreign travel or paid tuition for family members or a recreational vehicle, motor stagecoach? It's just outlandish for us to contemplate. I mean, that's like a jailable offense for people over here. And it's just like the normal business as usual at the Supreme Court that they're collecting millions of dollars and hundreds of thousands of dollars from their so-called friends. And so we need to clean that up. And that's why, we said, we're going to start with something simple that the whole country will be able to understand immediately and intuitively. We want a $50 gift ban for U.S. Supreme Court justices. They make $300,000 a year, pay for your own lunch.
The exact dollar amount isn't clear, but a watchdog is reporting that Clarence Thomas received more than 93 gifts totaling over $2.4 million. But lucky for us, we have a very well-documented 20-year friendship of Clarence Thomas and Harlan Crow. Clarence and his wife Ginny, who has an affinity for insurrection, have enjoyed lavish luxury vacations with the Crow family for the past 2 decades. Just last year, right around the overturning of Roe versus Wade, out of the goodness of his heart, Harlan Crow decided to pay off Clarence's mother's house. And they're seen here celebrating with a $5,000 bottle of wine, which is very modest for a public servant in my opinion. And Clarence likes to support him by wearing t-shirts with his name on it. Luxury trips to the lodge. And they have such a special friendship that Harlan Crow has this image painted in one of his vacation homes. All of these men meeting with one of the most powerful in all of the land. What could possibly go wrong here?
Thomas, whose corruption is almost comical. Secret trips to retreats, international vacations on super yachts, and private jet jaunts to New Haven for an afternoon. Here in Congress, we are forbidden from receiving gifts that exceed $50. But Justice Thomas has received more than $4 million in gifts, largely undisclosed, since joining the court. And worse, it appears to be working. He is currently primed to overturn his own 2005 doctrine so he can side with Charles Koch's network and their oil and gas interests, the same Charles Koch who he secretly vacationed with at the retreat. Or take Justice Alito, whose quote-unquote friendship with billionaire Paul Singer, along with more undisclosed gifts and private jet trips, was followed by a shift in the court's decision to take up Singer's own case. Coincidentally, after Justice Alito took an unreported fishing trip to Alaska with Singer, the Supreme Court reversed their position and took up his case, ultimately leading Singer to a victory netting $2.4 billion. This was not a bad return on Singer's $80 million in political donations, a fishing trip, and a couple bottles of $1,000 wine. And of course, in 2022, these billionaires and their handpicked justices won their keystone victory against the American people and their progress as a society. They overturned Roe v. Wade. So why was it abortion? Why was the threat of women having freedom powerful enough to bring down our whole system of judicial ethics and cripple one of the 3 co-equal branches of government? That is because these rich and powerful men are in an existential fight for a status quo that enshrines their power and places them above the American public in the rules. The confluence of money and conservatism is no coincidence, and we are here today to connect the dots. Predictably, funded by who else but Leonard Leo.
She brought up a lot of wonderful questions about ethics, and so now would be a great time to remind you that in 2023, the Supreme Court wrote their own rule of ethics. And it all gets very interesting when you come to the disqualification portion because most of them have broken every single one of these rules. And starting at the top of the list with rule number 1, which is a justice is presumed impartial and has obligation to sit unless disqualified. So surely he would be disqualified over presiding over one of his best friend's cases, right? And then it gets even more interesting when we get to the financial activities portion, where it very clearly states in black and white that the justices themselves or their spouses should not be receiving gifts. It is a little vague regarding vacations, but I digress. But it doesn't just stop with gifts, because we need to talk about the wives of these two guys. Just last week, a photo surfaced from 2021 of an upside-down American flag being flown at none other than Justice Alito's house. And now there's a couple different audio tapes that have leaked that really let us know their opinions on things. And it's a little bit troublesome to hear that he doesn't think that the U.S. right and left can coexist. They also criticized the pride flag, and she let us know that she's not remorseful about any of it. And she also wanted to remind us of her German heritage and let us know that Germans don't forget, whatever that means. And let's not forget about Ginny Thomas, who had a first-hand role in trying to overturn the 2020 election. She even attended the Stop the Steal rally on January 6th. How patriotic. She even appeared before the January 6th committee and let them know that she did feel regret about texting Mark Meadows, hoping to end democracy. Both are big fans of the former treasonous president of the United States. And the former felon of the United States, Donald Trump, went on to praise her after she was seen before the January 6th committee, because he thinks she's a really nice person. And after reading all of the rules of ethics that they wrote for themselves, I can't help but ask why they are allowed to stay on cases that they are very clearly compromised in. And what is the most concerning part about all of this is that the people that are such close friends with Donald Trump are going to be hearing his bid for immunity for trying to overthrow the government. The conservative-stacked Supreme Court wasted no time in the reversal of a decades-old law, which is Roe versus Wade, stripping millions of American women of their right to bodily autonomy. And we're already well aware of the fact that they are coming for contraception next. Looking at the list of court cases that are on the agenda makes me extremely nervous. And there is a whole list of remaining cases if you needed any more anxiety to add to your plate. And 5 of the current Supreme Court justices of the United States are members of the Federalist Society, whose entire agenda for decades has been to reverse Roe versus Wade and force a Christian nationalist society on all of us. And this should be ringing major alarm bells for all of you. And so, while there may not be any ethics or balance up on the Hill in Washington, it has become very clear that the checks are flowing. But all of you have a role to play in this, and so I suggest that you get to the polls and vote blue down the ticket, so that way we can expand the Supreme Court.